Are we on the air yet?
No, not yet.
Oh god. I think I've just crapped my knickers.
3, 2, 1. You're on.
Press regulation in the UK. The Independent Press Standards Organisation, IPSO, was established in September 2014. It was designed to replace the Press Complaints Commission, which was wound up, as it was seen as completely ineffective in addressing complaints about the press. The IPSO regulates itself, and is funded by its member publishers. Several large publications, for example, the Financial Times, The Guardian, The Independent, The Observer, have declined to join IPSO, some citing the fact that it was set up under Royal Charter, which may have negative effects on press freedom. Others feel that because news transmission is now global, press regulation within national boundaries is irrelevant. There is also a strong feeling that IPSO lacks independence, as it is funded and controlled by the newspaper and magazine industry, which it represents. Indeed, there have been many complaints that IPSO rulings have been biased in favor of the media, and sometimes did not follow due process. Why do headlines matter? It's well known that when many buy a newspaper, our choice of tabloid often dictates which tabloid is chosen. Newspaper publishers are aware of this, and thanks to the dumbing down of the UK and other educational systems, vie for the most outrageous and sensationalist headlines to attract the ill-educated and prurient reader. However, when headlines are misleading or partisan in view, or frame the story in such a way it is biased, or echoes the political views of the owner, then serious damage can be done to people, political figures and institutions. It's not fake news we are discussing here, although elements of distortion are usually present. It's actual news which has been slanted or looked at from a sensationalist perspective, often by ignoring or minimizing truth. In fact, this headline was completely inaccurate, and it even stated in the newspaper that the data given includes people that were not patients that had been in contact with mental health services a year prior to the report, and includes both manslaughter and murder victims. The story quotes an academic report, produced by the Centre for Mental Health and Risk at the University of Manchester. It's certainly not an exclusive investigation by The Sun, who merely distorted a public report available on the internet, and sensationalized it. These pictures speak for themselves. The RMS Titanic sank on 14th of April 1912, ship's time, with the loss of over 1,500 lives out of a total complement of crew and passengers of 2,224. Naturally, the Queen complained, as historically she is politically neutral. Also, Buckingham Palace confirmed the Queen had never made or written such a statement. The Independent Press Standards Organisation, IPSO, determined the headline was significantly misleading, and required The Sun to publish their decision as a remedy. In an editorial it stated IPSO ruled that only the headline had breached its code and tells readers, tabloid newspapers like The Sun have long made eye-catching assertions in headlines alongside a smaller headline to qualify or attribute them. It is a standard device. It's difficult to imagine a wallaby making crop circles. Surely they would have only trampled the crops? I'm afraid the election is going to be rigged. I have to be honest, Donald Trump told an angry crowd in Columbus, Ohio. A few weeks later, Cameron Harris, a 23-year-old former college quarterback and fraternity leader, and new college graduate with a fervent interest in Maryland Republican politics and a need for cash, sat down at the kitchen table in his apartment to fill in the details Mr. Trump had left out. This is the result, featured online on the website he owns. This topic is rather sensitive, Mr. Harris said, noting that he was trying to build a political consulting business and needed to protect his reputation. But eventually he agreed to tell the story of his foray into fake news, a very part-time gig that he calculated paid him about $1,000 an hour in web advertising revenue. In 1986, Max Clifford was behind the outrageous headline "Freddie Starr ate my hamster." Clifford encouraged the Sun to run the story and told Starr it would be great for his image. Once a famous entertainer, Starr fled to Spain after he incurred a £860,000 legal bill he couldn't pay. The story was completely fictitious, and designed to help Starr's flagging reputation. In his autobiography, Starr wrote, "I have never eaten or even nibbled a live hamster, gerbil, guinea pig, mouse, shrew, vole or any other small mammal." Decades after the headline appeared, he was still repeatedly stopped in the street to be asked if the story were true. Sodium makes up 40% of salt. If a food label lists sodium instead of salt, multiply the answer by 2.5 for an accurate picture of the salt content. Too much sodium has been linked to kidney stones, high blood pressure and cardiovascular disease. The American Heart Association, AHA, recommend a maximum intake of no more than 2.3 grams or 2,300 milligrams of sodium a day, or around 1 teaspoon, and preferably no more than 1,500 milligrams. Most Americans take in too much salt, and 75% of it is hidden in processed and packaged food. The Daily Express article was written in 2012. In December 2016, a report was published in German Neurology. The study identifies a link between high statin use and a lower risk of Alzheimer's disease, though the reduced risk is dependent on sex, race, ethnicity, and the type of statin used. Overall, men and women with high exposure to statins were 15% and 12% less likely to be diagnosed with Alzheimer's, respectively, compared with men and women with low exposure to the drugs. For black men, the team identified no significant reduction in Alzheimer's risk with the use of any statin. The researchers stressed that their study is unable to prove cause and effect, so clinical trials are required, involving all racial and ethnic groups, to confirm their results. The Chicago Daily Tribune was a famously Republican-leaning paper, which had previously called Truman a nincompoop. Truman, as it turned out, won the electoral vote by a 303 to 189 to 39 majority over Dewey and Strom Thurmond. Following the complaint, The Daily Telegraph defended the article to the APC, Australian Press Council, arguing in the context of the article reasonable readers would agree with the description of those who would prefer to abuse the social security system and enjoy taxpayers' money rather than look for work as dole grubs and dole bludgers. The Sydney tabloid claimed the article's focus was not to vilify welfare recipients but to focus public attention on the extent of the welfare burden on the federal budget. The APC's view was that while 70,000 New Start allowance, parenting payment and youth allowance recipients provided medical certificates, it does not rationally follow that 70,000 were dole budgers. That's the bombastic and misleading headline running in a New York Daily News Saturday print edition about Nicholas Cruz, the 19-year-old man who confessed to murdering 17 high school students and faculty in Parkland, Florida, in February 2007. Cruz was a member of the Junior Reserve Officers Training Corps (JROTC) program at Stoneham and Douglas High School, where the shooting took place. JROTC programs operate in more than 1,700 high schools across the U.S. and are sponsored by the U.S. Army rather than the NRA. There is no evidence that the NRA provided marksmanship training to Cruz or any other JROTC members. The article claimed Mark Carney, the head of the Bank of England, had made an explosive intervention by stating that a huge influx of foreign workers is threatening the economy by holding down wages. In fact, his comments, quoted in a small section of page 4, were that the UK labour force has expanded significantly in recent years, due to a number of factors, one of which is strong population growth partly driven by net migration. This was the only reference he made to migrants or migration in his speech and, importantly, he made no mention of wages at all. Speaking on Radio 4's Today program that same day, Carney clarified that most of the increase in labor supply had been down to British employees working more hours and older workers staying in employment. Over the last 2 years, these factors have been 10 times as significant as migration.